All right, guys, we are live, and a big, curveball here. My perfect summer practice record attendance is shot. Sanji wasn't there today, so I've got Wilson Alexander, who I'm excited to have for the first time here on TigerBait on YouTube, and he's gonna fill in nicely, I say, because he's been out there to every single one of them on a day when neither myself or Buddy Sanji went. So, welcome in, Wilson. I'm glad to have you with us.
Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Let's talk about it. Obviously, the big news, and you and I were talking about it off the air before I hit the live button. Denver Harris, and you tend to think that some of the movement this week is part of what's going on here.
Movement in terms of who's playing cornerback?
Well, just movement as far as Brian Kelly is going to talk to the media earlier. That movement, and is it Denver Harris related or something else?
Right. So as I think a lot of people realized, Denver Harris was not in a team picture that was taken yesterday. He has not practiced now 2 days in a row. Well, his status is unclear right now, uncertain as well. I've been told that he is still on the team. There was some speculation that maybe he had been dismissed when he was not in the team photo. I've been told that's not the case. But what exactly he's dealing with in terms of if there's being discipline going on right now, Brian Kelly is now expected to address that tomorrow. He was originally had a press conference scheduled Saturday. They've moved that to Wednesday. And so we'll be able to ask him then what exactly is going on with Denver Harris, and get some comments actually on the record instead of talking to anybody off the record or anything like that. So that'll be maybe when some clarity arrives as to what is going on here. Denver, of course, had a history of some discipline issues his freshman year at Texas A&M, getting indefinitely suspended the second half of the year there. And Brian Kelly said, when asked about him in March, that they said it was, quote, worth the risk. So he acknowledged there was a risk there. Kelly wants these guys to be towing the straight and narrow and following all the team rules, doing all the accountability checks, even if it's something small. They have a lot expected of them in terms of what they're doing off the field. And Kelly said that back then, that they had interviewed Harris a lot, and that he, the culture they thought was strong enough to bring him in and try to test out somebody who's got certainly some raw talent as a corner. But at this point, he is not practicing.
Well, this report brought to you by the Schmolke investment team. And another thing that you and I talked about before going live is, regardless of what's going on off the field, whether it's disciplinary or academic or both or what have you, I'm just amazed by the fact that, you're talking about a guy who played a good bit before he got dismissed at Texas A&M, had a lofty ranking by all the networks coming out of high school. And I can honestly say not once in the spring or in fall camp up until we hadn't seen him anymore has he ever flashed anything to me. If he were in good standing or whatever the issue might be, I don't know where he would actually be on the depth chart, because I don't think he would be second team either. He
has not shown anything that would make him be a first team corner at this point. It's not like he's played poorly necessarily, but he hasn't shown you the traits of a true lockdown number one, put him on an island and forget about him. That he hasn't played to that level. And I don't know if Ellis, maybe he was expected to coming in here as a sophomore after playing, early with Texas A&M and being the 5-star coming out of high school and all that, but that's not what you've seen to this point. So even if he isn't practicing and playing, the immediate hit is to your depth, not necessarily to somebody who was going to be a starter right out of the gate against Florida State.
Well, yeah, and I think the other part of it is regardless of not knowing what the depth chart is going to look like at corner, just about everybody else at some point or another since the spring, whether it be Welch in the spring game and other times, Stamps, Andre Sam, you've got a slew of defensive backs back there who have flashed multiple times. And we just have not had that one moment where, holy smoke, there's Denver Harris, that you saw what all the hype was about. There hasn't been a single time that I can recall, unless you saw something a day that I was on the other side of the field. But I can't recall anybody in the media who goes out to practice or Brian Kelly in a press conference singling him out for flashing anything.
No, and Matt House was asked about him on Saturday, and this was when Harris was still practicing. He wasn't asked about him, excuse me. He was asked about the cornerbacks in general. Harris had practiced that day, and he mentioned three guys: Juice Chestnut, Zy Alexander, and Ashton Stamps as players who had flashed. It's still a matter for really everybody in that cornerback room of being consistent. But absolutely, like you said, everybody else has had a moment or at least a play here or there where you thought, oh, hey, there's something. And it's not happening play in and play out necessarily, especially against a talented receiver core like this. You're going to get beat at times. Denver had not really had any of those moments where you thought, okay, wow, that's a guy who you really need to see on the field. There's raw talent, and LSU believes in the talent based on the conversations I've had with people, who have watched him and things like that. But there, at least from our perspective, it hasn't been seen on the practice field since he got here.
Absolutely. Buddy kind of raised some eyebrows yesterday when he got a little animated about he didn't think in the time period out there that maybe Jaden Daniels didn't look as sharp as he could have been. But you said this morning Jaden looked really good on the other side of the ball.
He did today, and now and I hear where Buddy's coming from, because especially early on in camp, there were some checkdowns and maybe a little bit of hesitation that looked somewhat concerning. But I do think it's important to note that we don't know the play calls and the read progressions, that there's so much that goes into every play that you just don't know about. So it's hard to really understand from his perspective what he's seeing. And you just want him to, throw a ball really quick and air it out and all that. And that's maybe not completely realistic, especially at this point in camp. But what we've now seen over the last few days, I think, is very encouraging. Is getting incredibly strong practice on Saturday, probably the best that he and the passing offense as a whole has looked. And then he was really solid today as well. They did a 2-minute drill in a 1-minute drill as well, in which he was 4 of 6 when we could see him out there. He stepped up in the pocket, threw a great throw to Mason Taylor, and then threw a good ball down the sideline deep to Kyron Lacey. And then the very last throw that we could see, he threw one deep. He was under pressure up the middle in his face, hung in there to give Malik Neighbors a chance downfield. And Malik went up and made a heck of a catch. And so I think he's aggressive on his intermediate routes, and he's taking chances downfield, especially when he sees man coverage. And that is certainly a positive sign as you get closer to Florida State.
Well, you know what? I think most people that have been out there overall will say that the offense is way ahead of the defense. But things are going to get a little bit different with the first scrimmage on Saturday. And first of all, I think what that says is offensively, this team is absolutely loaded. We can point out some weak spots on defense, but I think if everybody stays healthy, whether it be the 8 running backs, the dozen plus whatever wide receivers, a tight end room that's got more pieces than it had last year. Den Brock seemed absolutely giddy last week. The quarterback situation. I think they're going to be able to pick their score. But I do think that shows you the veteran nature of the offense and the skill players. But I will say that the defense can absolutely make up a lot of ground in the next couple of weeks. And of course, we're hearing Jacoby and Guillory yesterday say it 2 or 3 times. Iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel, whatever it is. I think we're going to see the defense start to make some strides here in the coming weeks, and they need that. But I have cautioned a lot of people when talking about the offense and the receivers having a field day against some of LSU's defensive backs, is that there's been no pass rush. There's nothing coming off the edge. There's been no Mason Smith or Wingo or Jacobian or any of those guys coming up the middle. It's going to be a whole different animal now that they're going to start scrimmaging.
Absolutely. On the offensive side, there's so many pieces, and it's a matter of whether or not LSU can put them together and take that next step from being an efficient offense to being explosive downfield. They've talked a lot about improving yards after catch and yards after contact. That's a big emphasis for this offense, having those little details sort of worked on so that this offense is able to, have those big chunk plays that you didn't quite see last year. Some of that, Mike Denbrock has said, is, the routes that they're using, getting them turned upfield at the catch instead of their backs to the goal line quite as much. And so I'm fascinated to see how that turns out, because offensively there's all this continuity, all these guys coming back, that it's like, all right, the recipe, the ingredients are there. Can you put together the whole recipe and make the dish so that it, looks good and is successful come the season. It's just kind of, we won't know until Florida State, obviously. But that's kind of been the whole case with the offense. Like, all right, everything looks pretty good, but we just kind of have to wait and see on this one. The defense, there's more that you can kind of parse through because of all the things up in the air in terms of like position battles and, different players coming in, especially in the secondary. I think that the defense has gotten better throughout camp and shown some improvement. They're not, even in one-on-ones, when you don't have the pass rush, and Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier have all the time in the world, we've seen some more fight and physicality out of that group. Some of these times when Jaden Daniels is having to throw checkdowns in 7-on-7, it's because guys are covered downfield. And, I think it's still very much a question mark how this secondary is going to play in particular, but you like what you got in the front seven, and they have made some good plays here and there. So once that scrimmage is going to be, especially if it is like a full scrimmage on Saturday, will definitely be revealing as to where that team sits about 2 weeks from now.
And here's the other part of it. I'm not going to compare this receiving core to 2019, but it's obvious that this wide receiver group nationally, if you want to say where would it rate in the SEC, where would it rate nationally? I mean, it's probably going to be in everybody's top three, if not number one, number two. I mean, it's way up there. And so these defensive backs, Saturdays in the fall might be like a day off compared to what they face during the week. And so that is a positive. That, a lot of people need to think about it that way as well. And so, guys, if you're enjoying this practice report, please hit that like button. Of course, we're brought to you by the Schmolke investment team. And here's the deal. You don't know where to turn when it comes to your investments. Do you have a retirement account that is not being managed? Call the Schmolke investment team. They are both LSU alumni and big fans of the university and athletic teams. They would love to manage your investments because they are committed to helping you better navigate the unplanned events that happen in life. Bart and Brian Schmolke have been in the investment business over 45 years and are well-versed in the investment industry. They will handle all your accounts with the utmost discretion and professionalism. If you have an investment account, a retirement account, and want to discuss your financial situation and goals, they can help you. Give them a call at 318-448-3201 or visit them at 128 Versailles Boulevard in Alexandria. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA/SIPC. And I can personally vouch for Bart and Brian. I've known these guys for over 20 years, and there's no finer people. And let them help you prepare your future. I tell you what, Wilson, LSU again, number 5 yesterday in the AP poll. So both polls of LSU number 5. Are you buying or selling?
Ooh, buying or selling number 5. I think it's a reasonable starting point for this team based on what it accomplished last year and everything that it brought back. It's on the high end of the range I expected to see LSU in the poll. I figured it'd be anywhere from 5 to 7 once in the AP and in the coaches poll.
Then you and I were in the same range because I was saying 5 to 8. If you put 7 or 8, I wouldn't have argued with you. But then when you start looking at the guys behind LSU, the teams behind them, a lot of them you can intermingle, interchange. I think that's. I'm with you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I think it, like you said, it's a reasonable point. I was kind of surprised to see Florida State like a good 3 spots back because these teams feel like they're coming into the year in such sort of similar positions after both winning 10 games a year ago, experienced quarterbacks, a lot of offensive weapons, some really good players on the defensive side as well. When you think about Jared Verse leading the way there, that I kind of thought they might be a little bit higher up, maybe even like number 6, and it could be like just back to back kind of going into the year. That was maybe the only thing in the poll, especially because we're so sort of LSU focused around here and who are they playing. The thing that kind of surprised me was to maybe see them actually a little bit lower than I thought, because I figured they'd both be in that, like you're saying, 5 to 8 range. But I thought they might be a little bit closer together than, on the two ends of that range at 5 and 8.
Have you been keeping an eye out a little bit on practice reports coming out of Tallahassee? Because I have not. I'm not aware if they've had any type of injury bug or not so far.
The only thing that I know of is that one of their defensive line transfers was denied a waiver to play right away. But I haven't really started studying Florida State super closely yet, other than the fact that just kind of vaguely knowing what's coming back from last season.
Well, LSU fans, knock on wood, because I'm about to say something. Even though LSU hasn't really been in full pads for a full week, or is coming right up on it, they have fared fairly well, I'd say, in the injury department. And so, but you're about to hit the second week of full pads, and scrimmages are happening. And but look, they've done a good job, I think, not only managing the heat. You've had all your linemen out there in full braces, and nice mixture of going indoors and outdoors. But so far, you haven't seen a litany of high ankle sprains or any of that so far. So I think they're faring pretty well, considering. I mean, really, it seems like it's a every other year karma. I don't know if you think it was on the high end last year, but it seems like they're ahead of schedule in regards to the walking wounded.
The one thing I just want to see is these running backs get a little bit healthy. For the last 2 days now, Armani Goodwin, Josh Williams, and Logan Diggs have all been limited. Kelly said that Diggs was coming off a hamstring over the summer. And we know that, Williams and Goodwin both missed spring practices as they were recovering from injuries. They seemed like they were getting better today, especially Josh Williams was moving around a little bit more than he had been. But that's the one area where I just want to see them get healthy, because, elsewhere there hasn't been really a major blow, like you say, knock on wood, cross all your fingers and all those things. But those are three guys who are maybe three of your top four running backs in terms of talent and what they're bringing to the table.
But even then, Wilson, it's like, where else in the country, who else in the country could withstand three running backs with some little nagging issues?
That's a good point. LSU. Yeah, that's a good point for sure. I just think that those are probably three of your top four, and you want to get them back onto the field and mixed in the offense as early as you possibly can.
And then you start to say, if they're all healthy, what is the difference between LSU's number 3 running back and their number 7 running back?
Especially because Trey Bradford's looked really solid.
Yeah, if you don't have a Fournette at the top or somebody of that, caliber is your number 1, but you've got a lot of guys who are, I kind of said it, that there's not a first rounder, but there's a bunch of guys who could be second to fourth round guys. That's what that whole group looks like to me. And I'm not going to put the freshman in that, because I think Trey Holly can do some big time things. I'm really curious to see what kind of opportunity he gets as a true freshman when you've got a running back room that's got 8 guys. But I think you're going to see a lot of running backs catching a lot more balls than we have. I believe that.
They would like to get them more involved in the passing game. We've seen it, every single day they're trying to catch the ball. And that was one of the things that Logan Diggs kind of brought to the table. One of his best plays last year at Notre Dame was against South Carolina in their bowl game, catching a pass in the flat and turning it into a really long touchdown. I can't remember the exact yardage. And so that's one of the things, like, we haven't really seen much out of him yet. What does he really bring to the table here? Because he's been kind of banged up and not being sort of limited, and not full go. And so, but it's so, that's the thing about this group that's going to be just fascinating to see how it plays out. And it's also why I feel like even whoever starts against Florida State, I would not be surprised if that person is not the leading rusher at the end of the season, because they have so many guys. You kind of have to see once games actually start where the cream's going to rise to the top. When we saw it last year, like, Josh Williams was not your number 1 running back against Florida State in the opener a year ago, and he just ended up becoming that the second half of the season. And so once games really get going and they're able to see these guys against another team, then we'll probably start to actually get some more clarity. But I always keep this line in mind that Brian Kelly really likes experience. And so that leads me to think that even though Trey and Caleb have shown some raw optimism and positive signs as freshmen that you like maybe building into the future, I'll be surprised if they have a big role on this team, because there's so many veterans in front of them.
All right, I'm going to fly through some of these and I'm going to get you out of here. I told you I'd keep him 15 minutes and I've already got you almost at 20. Roger Ranjip has one that I got on a radio show in Alexandria with Bart last night, and I haven't really followed up on it. He says, "Good to be with you fellas. Wondering how the new AC helmets are doing. Go Tigers." I haven't heard. Have you? I don't know, with the newspaper guys and the print guys, and y'all get players up at roll over from us guys doing video. Have y'all talked about the AC helmets and asked them how they're doing? Are they using them in every practice?
We haven't. No, that's something we should do and think to follow up on. I haven't seen any sign of them. just don't know. I don't know if they're being used or if they aren't, and if they are being used, if it's being helpful. I frankly do not know. I wish I had a better answer for you, Roger.
I mean, Wilson, if you think about the heat that when we're out there with, I don't know how many of what practice are we on right now, and of how many of those have been over 100 degrees. And I mean, we've seen a few guys lose breakfast, but overall, I think they've done a darn good job. They got the galvanized tubs out there with blocks of ice. They've got the big Ben Bordelon freezer out there that those guys can get in and cool down. Practices again, half sometimes indoors and moving them around. They're doing a good job of being protective of the heat, but I wonder if part of the reason why we haven't seen a bunch of guys falling out is because maybe those helmets are contributing to these guys being able to survive each day. Yeah,
it's certainly a theory, and it goes back to Brian Kelly. I think is very intentional about how he structures practice. Even when kind of right out of the gate, there was some guys struggling, and it was extremely hot, and I saw some comments to just people being like, "Oh, why are you outside?" and sort of giving him a hard time about it. He had a plan in mind to get to the point where they could go for an hour and a half outside uninterrupted and nobody needed an IV. Because right off the bat, a bunch of guys needed IVs to deal with the heat, and they just needed fluids because they were losing them so quickly. And so that was sort of the plan that he had in mind, and also knowing that it's not like the Saints where you play your home game in a dome. Come September, when you're in Orlando and then back in Tiger Stadium, it is going to be really hot, even if you're playing at night and just humid. You're going to lose a lot of fluids over the course of a game. And so he's got to get them ready for those conditions. And based on there's a lot of thought being put into that plan in order to get them back. We've clearly seen their conditioning level get better and better over the last couple of weeks.
Ed O got the crab says, "Hey, Mike, best coach in the boot. We all thought Coach Frank had Nola locked down. What happened to how did Wardell Mack get away?" I'll just say this, and maybe Wilson has followed a little bit also, but I think with Wardell Mack is that I always felt that he wasn't absolutely sold on staying home. He's always been a little too cool or standoffish throughout the entire process. When you look at all the kids in the last year who have made multiple visits to LSU for unofficial visits and so forth, he's not been a guy who's been there consistently. And so is it over? I don't know. But that is a nice get for Florida. I've been kind of having some fun saying that Corey Raymond really hasn't done much in Louisiana, and he comes in year two and gets Wardell Mack. But we'll see how that plays out. There's obviously, look, LSU's got multiple cornerbacks already committed in this class, right? 4 of them. And so is that part of it? We're going to see how it plays the rest of the way. Anything you got on that one?
No, I think he summed it up.
But now we wait to see what's going to happen with Dominic McKinley. And I've got Preston got an exclusive interview with him and his coach earlier today, and I'm going to roll that probably by this evening. Be on the lookout on TigerBait. All right, let me scroll down here real quick, see if there's any. Brian Turner, with the secondary concerns made evident during camp and with the possibility of not having Harris week 1, does LSU get torched by Florida State in the secondary like what happened against Tennessee?
Well, we don't know. I mean, we're just not going to know. We don't. Obviously, Florida State's got some. I wish we could have a more definitive answer, but yeah, I mean, Florida State's got some great receivers. Johnny Wilson is a massive target on the outside. I don't know exactly. I'm really curious to see how LSU tries to handle somebody who's 6'7" and runs like he does. Because Deuce Chestnut is kind of more of a headsy player who's really savvy underneath. But if he's being asked to try to go up on a fade against Johnny Wilson, any of LSU's guys are probably going to have a hard time because of the height advantage that he has there and the length that he brings. This is a secondary, though, that it's just in general, like I think this season, and I don't want to put like a whole season on just one position group, but in many ways, this season does kind of hinge on what they're able to bring if they can be strong in the back end. LSU can probably do some things to give them a lot of help in terms of its pass rush and being really active on the front 7 and not give quarterbacks very much time. But there's going to come a day when they got to make a play, and we'll just have to see if they can end up doing it.
Max says, did Mason Smith get hurt at practice? Hunt Palmer said he laid on the ground for like 5 minutes. Did you see what was going on there?
This was at Saturday's practice, and Mason went down at the end of the 11-on-11. He ended up getting up, walking off the field. He was favoring, limping certainly, but he ended up staying on the sideline and even put his helmet back on. I don't think he went back in practice as we were leaving. LSU usually practices a little bit longer with his full team periods. But we then saw him yesterday out on the field.
He was getting after it yesterday.
Go. Yeah, he wasn't full go. He was wearing sneakers. He didn't have his braces on or anything. But then today was a really great sign because he was in full pads, had the knee braces on, fully taped up and doing quite a lot of individual work and showing some burst. It didn't seem like he was, laboring at all. And so I don't think there's really any reason to worry about what happened on Saturday affecting his availability for week 1.
All right, let's see. J.K. Johnson and Brooks have injury concerns. Well, Brooks was vertigo, and we've seen J.K. Johnson with one of those carts wheeling around, and he's kind of been snake bit. Talking to one of my good buddies who covers the Buckeyes, and he was giving me the rundown on him at Ohio State and what was LSU getting, and I don't know what his timetable is going to be, but it doesn't look like it's anytime soon.
He's out indefinitely. He's dealing with a fracture in that lower left leg, and so indefinitely was the word that Brian Kelly used last week, and so that's kind of where this also, the concern with Denver Harris continues to kind of compound this cornerback room. JK is already out indefinitely. We don't know what's going on with Denver in terms of his availability, and so now you're looking at a cornerback room that is kind of getting thin. And it was already sort of uncomfortable in terms of your depth because you just didn't know what you had. And so, Ashton Stamps has come up the depth chart, but how much will he be able to really play as a freshman is still, a question mark as your number 3 potential corner there. And so I think that's not just it sucks for JK, just personally, but when you look at how it affects LSU with having potential, him and out indefinitely and Denver kind of question, right now it's just a cornerback room that is just getting thin, which is not a great feeling.
I will say this about JK. He's always got a smile on his face, and it looks like he's enjoying it down here. But there's no doubt he'd certainly prefer to be healthy and out there competing right now. All right, guys, we've been talking about the heat, and get over to Drip IV. All your hydration needs has been killer this summer. Dehydration is real. Drip IV will guide you through whatever drip you need that will fit your needs. IVs are also great for anyone feeling under the weather in need of an energy boost. They are also loaded with vitamin C and other great vitamins. Located next to Sushiyama and Iverstein's and Perkins Crossing on the corner of Perkins and Essen, a super convenient spot, and they always welcome walk-ins. Lafayette Tiger fans, you can also catch them at Cordoba off of Ambassador Caffrey, First Medical Office building on the right. Tell them TigerBait, and they will give you $10 off your first IV drip. They are fantastic. Bunch of people, and I'm due for another one. I'm telling you, you'll feel absolutely a lot better. Nobody is fully hydrated when you're dealing with these temperatures. And if you're doing any type of yard work or heading to the gym, or it's amazing. I'm seeing people jog out there at 3:00 in the afternoon. Wilson, I don't know how people do it.
I don't either. I don't like running in general. Not for me. That sounds miserable.
All right, man. So in closing, tell me what anything you've seen out there that's alarm bells, your biggest concern? Is it like everybody else that's covering LSU? It's cornerback and maybe some injury at safety. Is that primarily it? You feel good about where special teams is heading?
Yeah, the main concern, cornerback, and for me as well. Special teams, I like the approach that they're taking. There's been a lot of focus put on it. Every single day that they're out there, they're doing something on special teams. And the players have talked about a lot of energy that Diaco has brought to that. Whether or not it's going to actually work, we'll have to see. But the mere fact that they have Aaron Anderson back there returning kicks makes you feel better about it. Just him alone, I think, improves the special teams unit. As long as he's sure-handed, he's so dynamic with the ball in his hands that should by itself help improve special teams. Just the fact that he's back there.
Well, let me ask you this. I like to say I'm not being provocative, but maybe I am. But I do think Aaron Anderson has a good chance at leading LSU in some receiving statistical category, whether it's number of receptions, if it's yards after the catch, total yards, maybe it's touchdowns. I don't know, but I think he's going to lead the receivers in some category. And then
Yards
who
after
knows
the
what his
catch,
all,
that's good.
yeah, who knows what his all-purpose yards might be, you know, if you combine his receiving stats with punt returner, because I think they finally got a punt returner that can do some damage. It's been a while.
It has. I mean, Stingley was solid. It never broke the big one, but was able to pick up some yards there and when he was the punt returner. But I mean, since then it hasn't been a strong suit necessarily. And Aaron looks like he can be. I mean, he's got a burst. He's really quick, side to side, change of direction, agile. Everything you like everything you've seen out of him. And to back up what you're saying about him as a receiver, I mean, I think it was just yesterday. You know, there was a drill that they were going through, and there was 8 pass attempts. 3 of them, this was like when the first team offense went to Aaron Anderson. Had a slant over the middle from Jaden, caught a little thing in the flat. We've seen him try to take some jet sweep sort of handoff actions, and you know, Mike Denbrock said he's going to be a real asset in the screen game as well. So, you know, it's probably not going to be like your Malik out on the boundary or Brian Thomas out on the boundary, but he's sort of this really fascinating gadget piece that can do a lot of different things. And LSU wants to be able to get him the football and thinks that's going to be a big piece of the offense. So him leading in some category, and I really like the yards after catch as a possibility. Would not be the worst bet in the world, probably.
All right. Tell me, what are you working on at the Advocate? Tell people how they can find you on Twitter. I'm assuming y'all have got one of your annual big football issues coming out with the pullout, right? Let them know what to expect coming from your column and your part of the Advocate universe.
We've got a couple things coming up that we're excited about. Next week, we are rolling out a project about this being the last year of SEC football as we have known it for so many years. My entire life, I've known divisions, East and West, and you know, the rivalries that we're all very used to, and the CBS song being part of my Saturday afternoon. And because of all this changing after 2023, we're doing a project sort of all about that. So that'll be in the paper every morning for about 6 days, different things sort of all related to that one general topic. And then over the course of the week, heading into Florida State, we'll have lots of features about the team. Every day sort of has a theme in general: offense, defense, special teams. Instead of just a tab like they've done in the past, that's sort of how we structure it now. So look out for some features and player profiles and a lot of intel about the team every morning, both in the paper itself and at theadvocate.com. That's where you can find us. You
bring up the CBS part of your childhood. When they rolled out that CBS theme with the some Big Ten footage behind it, that was just blasphemy.
It hurt my heart.
Yeah. You know, and then we see, just to go off before we head off, it's just one of these things where, you know, everybody like to get on Danielson, but now everything is in that ESPN basket, and you just wonder whether CBS will re-engage, NBC wants to get beyond just having Notre Dame. You know, part of me was hoping Fox Sports would come in and bid on it when CBS was up, and they didn't. I wonder, a lot of people wonder why they, you know, Sankey took the newest deal. I think he knows, because where the dollars are at, he better get it while it is, because that money's starting to wean. You see the layoffs at ESPN. I think he knew the getting was as good as it was going to get right now until there's another juncture in the coming years.
It was some good foresight. I mean, they made that deal a couple of years ago, actually, that it was announced, and it runs into the 2030s, like maybe 2030 itself. I can't remember exactly how long that deal goes, but it's also, like you're saying, I mean, the layoffs and the fact that can the SEC get more money for even going to 9 games? It's affecting scheduling. The TV networks are a major factor in everything that's happening right now with college football realignment or consolidation, whatever term you want to use. So the SEC seems like it's in a stable place, having already kind of gotten that wrapped up. And you know, obviously next year everything's going to be much different in terms of how you're used to watching your football on a Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Wilson, thanks for joining me, and follow him on X. This is the first time I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
I still say Twitter. He's at WH Alexander _. and go give him a follow on X Twitter. And thanks again, Wilson, for joining me and helping us out with this practice report today. And I'll see you in the morning out at practice.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me, and we'll see you out there, Mike.
All right, Wilson. Thanks, man.